Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Hollingrake. I'm the Minister for Enterprise Markets and Small Business. Welcome to Business Finance Week, which we're going to explain. Sarah Gardiner from the British Business Bank will explain more about in a second. But in terms of this particular conversation, my short remarks will centre around one particular thing, I guess, is that in my experience of I was in business for 30 years prior to entering politics. And the one thing I can tell you about accessing business finance is don't take no for an answer. Now, that is not to say that every bank is going to say yes, of course. But and you should learn from all your interactions in terms of the engagements you have on your road to finance. And the other thing I would say, don't expect it to be easy, but it is very, very worthwhile. I remember my first business, which I started when I was in my early 20s. I went to see my bank manager, a guy called Ron Taylor, who was the manager of Barclays Bank in Easingwold, in my hometown of Easingwold. And I went to ask him for a loan. And I think he gave me the loan. But I remember after our discussion, he gave me a piece of paper. And on it was a cartoon. And the cartoon, and this is a bit of toilet humour, I'm afraid, it was a young man, presumably a young business person, sat on a toilet. And under the cartoon were the words, "The job is not done until the paperwork is finished." So, and I think that's one thing you need to make sure you get right on this journey, is you need to expect to provide a bank or a non-bank lender or whoever else you access finance from, and there's lots of different ways, which we'll talk about in a second. You've got to make sure they've got access to the right paperwork, and I think that is vitally important. The good news is, from your perspective, and this isn't good news for our economy, and it's a statistic we're seeking to improve upon, is according to the Federation of Small Business, 80% of small businesses would rather grow more slowly than borrow, which is not good for our economy, because access to finance is critically important if you want to scale up a business quickly, or even beyond the normal rate of business growth. Why is that good news for you? Because I guess the 139 or so people who have registered for this seminar are the ones that are considering accessing business finance, which to me puts you at a competitive advantage. That's good news for you, because you can grow so much more quickly if you have access to finance. Now, the UK has a very proud record when it comes to startups. We are third in the OECD, the developed nations, 39 nations, in terms of the numbers of startup businesses per capita in the UK. We should be very proud of that. But we are seventh when it comes to scale-ups, and that's businesses that grow by 10% or more on average over a 3-year period. So we know we've got a job of work to do. So as I say, the key thing you need to do is make sure, when I say don't take no for an answer, that's not about being insistent if a bank says no, although you can always go back and you need to learn from your interactions and learn from those conversations. Why did they say no? And get a clear explanation for that, and then put things right. And that maybe improving your credit history, improving your paperwork, improving your cash flow forecast, for example. So all those things are things to listen, but don't be afraid to shop around. Another statistic for you, which we're very proud of, is from being some years ago in a place where 80% of business finance was provided by the top 5 banks. Today, only 45% of business finance is provided by those banks, and 55% of business finance is provided by other challenger banks, non-bank lenders. So there is a host of different providers, which is really good news, because business finance, like anything else, you get a better deal if you shop around. So, and we've got some great ways to help you do that. And some of these ways we're discussing on this call today. The British Business Bank has an excellent finance hub on its website, so you can go on there to find out who all those lenders are. And many of those lenders, let's not forget, are supported through the British Business Bank, via the government, via the British Business Bank, in terms of some of the money we put in, around £12 billion of financing to support small businesses in many different ways. So take advantage of some of the opportunities that delivers. Also, I'd recommend you take a look at one of the things we're talking about in the call today, this excellent new leaflet document provided by the British Business Bank about making business finance work for you. And there's lots of different ways, and sets out all the different routes there are to securing business finance. A couple of tips before you decide which way to go down those routes. Make sure you're well prepared. Make sure you prepare the information a bank's likely to need. So speak to your accountant. That's an obvious port of call before you start. Get the information together, including those cash flow forecasts and any security you might be able to provide. There is definitely a productivity increase for any business that goes digital. So we're big fans. I bet you get about a 8 to 17% increase in productivity for businesses that use digital tools like customer relationship management. And in this space, particularly, I'd point to things like digitized accounts records, bookkeeping, which help you prepare those forecasts that banks and non-bank lenders really like to see. So make sure you're well prepared and learn from the experiences you have. And in this document I was talking about, it's important to recognize the lots of different ways you can access bank funding. And this is hugely important. Very important part of my work is access to finance. But of course, debt finance, and everybody thinks about a loan or an overdraft, but that's just one of the ways you can get access to finance which can supercharge your business. Equity finance, of course. Through our angel investor program, the British Business Bank fund a co-fund regional investor angel programs right across the UK. Look for angel investors, very important when you're talking about a scale-up business that's quite small, that hasn't probably got that track record that banks like. Obviously, that's supported by schemes like the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme and the Enterprise Investment Scheme, which are really important in terms of raising finance. Research and development grants, of course, as well, get key access to finance. Asset finance, which is effectively finance on certain equipment. So if you have some plant and machinery, you may well be able to access that finance through those particular sources. And the other thing we're undertaking right now is the payment and cash flow review, making sure SMEs get paid more quickly, whether that's if they're doing for the public sector, and we set a maximum time limit for public sector invoices of 30 days, or whether it's the public sector. So we're trying to make it easier for you to get paid and put more requirements on big companies, particularly in terms of recording how quickly they pay their SMEs. But again, back to that digitization piece. If you use digital account software, you can get an easy plug-in for those things, which helps you chase your debts, helps you produce invoices and chase those invoices more effectively, which we know makes a big difference as well. And other ways, as you get bigger, the exciting things, whether equity investment through private equity, or indeed through an IPO or flotation, which is where our business eventually got to. There's lots of different ways to raise finance for your business. I know you're on a really exciting journey, and you're at a really exciting point in your journey. And our job in the Department of Business and Trade is to make it easier for you to do business every single day. I hope you feel that we're achieving that objective, but we know we've got lots of more work to do. Really interested to hear from Sarah now and the other contributors to see how we can make that difference we'd like to make.
Thank you, Minister Hollinrake. It's really great to have you here today. And there was some great bits of knowledge and advice there. I was always taught there's no such word as can't. So there were many things that I heard you say then that really, really did ring a bell with me. So it's great to have you on the webinar with us today. So today's webinar is, as Minister Hollinrake said, it's about preparing for external funding. This is part of Business Finance Week 2023. This is the second year that the British Business Bank has run this initiative, helping small businesses. I'm Sarah Gardiner. I'm part of the UK Network team. I'm the Insights and Strategy Director. And for those of you less familiar with the British Business Bank, we are the economic development bank for the UK, government owned but independently managed. Last year's pilot of Business Finance Week grew from initial idea of small collection of themed events to become a large campaign for the bank, with more than 60 partners reaching thousands of businesses across the UK. Today's event is one of 27 taking place across the UK. 16 are taking place in person and 11 are webinars. So please feel free, as Minister Hollingbrake said, to have a look at what else is going on through the remainder of this week, and if there is anything there that you think may help you on your journey. But if not, we will be recording all these sessions and they will be made available afterwards. So we've got over 2,500 participants signed up across this week, but it'd be great to have some more of you sign up if you are free and available for the remainder of this week. So what we're going to do today, myself and Paul Sullivan, who's the Senior Manager in UK Network for the East of England, we're going to go through some of the key things that you need to consider when you're preparing to apply for finance. We will then go on to look at some further help and signposting, and we've just talked about some of them, such as the Making Business Finance Work for You guide and the Finance Hub, which has some excellent pieces of information on it. And then I'm going to do the second half will be to interview Cemal, who's the founder from Change Please. And I'm really excited to interview Cemal because he's got a fantastic story. So in the interest of time, I'm going to pass you over to Paul to do the next section. But what I should probably say, if you've got any questions, you may have spotted a box to just drop your question in the box and we'll attempt to answer those questions as we move through today's session. So thank you. I'm going to pass over to Paul.
Thank you, Sarah, and good afternoon, everybody. What I'm going to cover off in over the next few minutes is around the preparation for finance. And I think, as Minister Hollingbrake said in his introduction, there is a view amongst some businesses that they don't want to take on external funding and finance, and sometimes lack of preparation can play a factor in this. So what we want to try and do over the next few minutes is encourage people to look at and see how taking on external funding can really help their business grow. Next slide, please, Joe. And then on to the next one, please. So what I'm going to cover off over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit around debt finance. That's more of my background. I've been with British Business Bank 5 years, but prior to that, I spent 30 years working for a high street bank, predominantly working with small businesses. I'm also going to touch briefly on equity finance. There is a third strand to accessing funding and finance for businesses, which is the grants landscape, which again, Minister Hollingbrake talked earlier. We're not going to cover that too much today, but there certainly is information through the Finance Hub on how some of those grants can be accessed. Next slide, please. I'm going to start off with debt finance. Now, unfortunately, at the moment, the word debt seems to only appear in the press with a negative connotation. Things like, how do I get out of debt? How do I manage my debt? What we're quite keen to demonstrate is that for many businesses, the right type of debt taken at the right time within their business journey can really be a catalyst for growth. So we want to talk about the different types of debt finance that are out there and encourage businesses to just avail themselves of the information that's out there and therefore make a really informed decision on where they want to take their business and how they want to move it forward. So the typical types of finance product that falls under the debt umbrella: term loans, which are an amount of funding that's advanced to you as a business owner over a set period of time, generally with an interest rate that will be linked to perhaps base rate, for example. But you as a business owner will know that you've got a monthly repayment to make each month, and you can build that into your plans. Commercial mortgages are there for larger purchases such as premises, etc. And then we move into asset financing. Again, that was mentioned earlier on. It's one of the fastest growing types of funding and finance out there, where it's linked specifically to buying a particular asset for your business. And this can be from vehicles, it can be equipment that you use within the day-to-day running of your business. It can also be used for things like solar panels to put on the roof of your business, or if you want to try and reduce your carbon footprint. You've then got flexible types of funding which sit there, which are overdrafts and invoice finance, very much linked to the type of business that you are and where your requirement for cash comes in. Next slide, please, Joe. If we're going to talk about any kind of funding, it would be remiss of us not to talk about the Startup Loan Programme. It's been mentioned already, but it's a hugely important part of what we do within the British Business Bank to encourage people to start their own business. It's a widely acknowledged gap that if you're a brand new business, that there's traditional types of funding and finance may not necessarily be there for you, which is where the Startup Loan Programme comes in. These are unsecured personal loans, which can range from £500 to £25,000 per key individual within the business. And they are absolutely there to get these businesses going, help them with some of the expenditure that they have in the very early stages. Now, it's accessible for anybody that's within their first 3 years of trading. And the trading piece is key, because very often sometimes people will register their limited company a couple of years ahead of starting. But if you're still within the first 3 years of actually trading and creating income, then the Startup Loan Scheme is absolutely applicable for you. And it's available for businesses in all types of sectors. But it also comes alongside some really valuable support. You'll be assigned a business mentor who will work with you for the first 12 months. And you can also access some really valuable learning that we've partnered with the Open University, no less, to provide some of this information for you to absolutely equip yourself in the best possible way to move your business forward. Next slide, please. Equity investment. Now, what does this mean? I could say think about Dragon's Den, but then I'd probably say don't think about it too much, because it's not hugely representative of the equity investment environment. And it kind of starts at the smaller level with business angels. Again, this had been mentioned earlier. But it can absolutely be a key way that business can start and grow, particularly if they're so far, they're right at the beginning of their journey. So they've not got any income yet. They may have a product in mind or a service in mind, and they need some capital to develop and produce that product. And equity investment can actually be a really vital way of doing that. Yes, the investors that put money into your business will take a stake of the business. And again, some of the numbers that you would see on Dragon's Den aren't necessarily representative of what the market is like out there. And we've talked already about where the information is available via our finance hub, and I'd certainly encourage you to have a look at that and bring, keep yourself up to date with really what's available within this particular type of funding. A big difference between equity investment and debt is that the investors that are putting money into your business should be bringing a lot more than just giving you a check. They should be there to open doors for you, use the benefit of their experience, and help them, or that they will help you then drive your business further forward. Next question. Next slide. Now, we talked about preparation, and I don't think it's ever too early to engage with somebody that you may be looking to borrow some money from, or somebody that you might want to invest in your business. And it certainly would pay to try and understand what their perspective would be when they're looking at your business and what's going on there. A lender would very much be looking at, how are you going to pay the money back that I lend you? And to a degree, what happens if your business doesn't quite work the way you would like it to? How am I going to get my money back that way? And that's sometimes where you would be asked for something called security to go in there. They certainly want to talk to you about the numbers, because that will be a demonstration of how you've got the cash available within your business to pay that loan back. This is a very different mindset to an investor. An investor, if they want to work with you, they'll all want to work with you as a business founder and as an individual. How can there be some chemistry between the two of you that can really work to drive that business forward? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? What's the new thing that you're trying to bring to market? How will that make a difference? Absolutely, they'll be thinking about how they can use their experience to benefit you and your business. And ultimately looking further ahead, and once your business has grown and generated some real success, how actually the investor does get a return. But I think it's fair to say that investors go into a relationship understanding that more often than not, they won't get a return. but very often they're driven by the excitement and the thrill of actually helping small businesses and move it forward. Very often they've been businessmen themselves and have gone through that journey, and it's great that they want to share their experience. Next slide. Whichever type of funding you're looking at, having a plan, whether it's something that you put down in paper or whether it's something you just have in your head that you can talk about and talk to on regular intervals, is absolutely key. Helps you understand, the journey that your business is going to go on. What's your product going to do? How is it going to move forward? Where is your market? How are you going to penetrate that market? How are you going to measure your success along the way? Whether that's in terms of your turnover, or whether it's in terms of the number of customers, but understanding the mechanics of that, I think, is really key for you as a business owner, but also to talk about that with confidence to either a lender or an investor. Next slide, please. Part of this plan will undoubtedly be around the financials, to look at how your business is going to go forward. Any investor or a lender will want to know how you're going to use their money. So you need to be able to demonstrate through a plan, through maybe a forecast, cash flow forecast, how that money is going to be used and how you're going to generate sufficient income on the back of it to meet the loan repayments, for example, or how your business is going to grow to become of a certain value that other people may look to acquire it, which is where an investor would get their money back. And this will cover a number of things as well. If you've invented a new product, for example, how you've put in place intellectual property to protect yourself from there. Next slide, please. The financial element of that plan is undoubtedly the one that's going to be scrutinised most because of some of the things that I've just outlined. It is an absolute demonstration of how your business is going to move forward and how you're going to generate some income and profit. So please don't, go past this. You are going to need to talk about this. There is some help and some templates that sit on our website and on our finance hub, but also talk to advisors as well, and accountants, bookkeepers, those people that can help you pull some of this key information together. Next slide. It's a sad fact, actually, that the majority of businesses that fail, over 80% of them, do so because they run out of cash. Not because their idea is poor or that they've managed their business in a poor way. It's just that they need that cash to keep their business going on a day-to-day basis. So absolutely, the cash flow document and how your business is going to generate income is really important. And it's certainly something that business owners should spend a good amount of time on. Next slide, please. And on one more, please, Joe. Now, we've given a bit of a whistle-stop tour across a number of different types of funding here at the moment. We're not going to get into the level of detail that I know some of you will want to do on a call like this. But where else can you go for help and support? I've mentioned our finance hub, but also there are a number of other professionals and service providers that are out there that you can tap into as a business owner to help support you on your journey. And all of these, again, will be available via our finance hub. And as if by magic, next slide, please, Joe. This is the link to our finance hub. Lots of further information on there about the different types of funding that I've covered, plus a number more on there to cover both the pros and cons of different types of funding, things that you kind of need to be aware of. And it's going back to the whole point of today's call. Preparation actually really will put you in the best place possible when you're sitting in front of an investor or a funder to do that. Without it, undoubtedly, you will come across some issues. That's me going through those slides. Sarah, back to you. Still on mute, Sarah.
Hey, so you're on mute, I think.
Jamal, while Sarah's trying to sort her tech out, maybe I can just kind of bring you in at this stage. Sarah mentioned at the outset that, you're a business owner that's gone through some of this journey. So just for a couple of minutes, and hopefully Sarah will sort our microphone out by then. Could you just give us a little bit of background about who you are, your business, and maybe a little a view on where you've been so far in terms of funding for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paul. So I'm Cemal Ezel, the founder and CEO of Change Please Coffee. We are a social enterprise that was set up 7 years ago to tackle homelessness, but do it through coffee. I mean, typically the way most organizations, NGOs, government bodies tackle the problem of homelessness is through a housing first model. We believe in what's called a job first model. So finding people that are in need out on the streets and allowing them to lift themselves out of homelessness through employment, through jobs. 44% of people who are homeless want to work and can work. And so we provide a training program for 6 months, a living wage job, which in London is around £23,500 a year, housing in 10 days, bank account, therapy support, and then a new job typically after around 6 months. I had the idea nearly 10 years ago, took about 18 months, 2 years to kind of get around to taking this idea into something that potentially was ready to work. The initial process for me was quite challenging. I used to be a commodity broker, but didn't know where to go, how to raise funding, how to start. And my entry point into being able to kind of turn this idea into reality was a startup loan through British Business Bank and Virgin Startup, which really for me was the launch pad of not just the business, but really the idea as well, because I had the concept, but then what the startup loan funding allowed me to do was to really stress test the idea and we've now grown into 8 countries around the world. And I think that application for the startup loan funding was probably the most challenging bit of work that I've done since. And that was valuable for me because it allowed me to really stress test the idea, look at the business model canvas, what is our USP? What are we offering? What are we different to the plethora of coffee shops that exist across the UK and coffee businesses, and really just make sure that this model does actually work and it's viable. And then alongside that, I had access to a mentor. And when I applied for funding, I got the £25,000, access to a mentor, and a huge amount of support from British Business Bank and Virgin Startup, and that really gave me the launch pad into setting up the organisation. And then subsequently, we've had support from British Business Bank through COVID as well. So a lot of our income relies on selling coffee to corporate organizations. So we supply coffee into airlines like Virgin Atlantic, now Delta, huge gym chains, organizations like Avanti, Virgin Trains, a lot of organizations. And our turnover from our wholesale revenues are now around £8 million a year. So, and that's in the UK and Ireland. So it's really just grown into a whole different area. However, during coronavirus, that business dropped by 95%. It was hugely traumatic for our organization. All of these corporates from organizations like Barclays and HSBC that we sell our coffee into stopped buying, and understandably stopped buying. All of our coffee shops on high streets stopped having trade. It was just hugely traumatic for us. So we then had the benefit of the bounce back loan scheme at the time and received support in that from British Business Bank and through partners. And then subsequently and most recently, we benefited from the RLS scheme through SIB, and we raised £1 million in loan funding, which we've opened new retail sites and really grown across the UK, which has been absolutely fantastic for us. So we're now looking for new funding, but I'll save that to kind of future questions. But it's really been phenomenal for us to be able to take the idea into reality and all the stress testing that goes alongside that, the mentoring support that goes alongside that. And then along our journey over the last 7 years to help us take that idea into a model that we've replicated into 8 other countries, and the services and support that we've seen from British Business Bank and also the Finance Hub. And just to say, we, in those other countries that we're in, from, the US, France, Germany, Australia, Ireland, I've not seen another type of platform as good as the Finance Hub to be able to, and I just went on actually before this session to kind of remind myself of the service, and it just blew me away actually, the ability to search for our stage of business and what our current needs are, and then see all the potential loans or equity opportunities or grants that exist at the moment. And even now, being an SME, from a small, tiny micro company to an SME, I didn't know of all the types of funding that are available for us, which really helps us to kind of look at new opportunities. So we're building an amazing tech platform at the moment, which is going to transform how we tackle homelessness. And the grants that are available for tech development, I think, is super exciting. So just so amazing. And I wish that service was available in the other countries that we're in as well. So yeah, so that's our journey so far. And it's a really amazing service, I think.
I mean, that is just an inspirational story, really. And, you know, so many different touch points where you've had to sort of tap into funding and it's available. I think what's quite clear from that is that you had a absolutely clear vision of what you wanted to do with your business and how you drove it forward. Maybe finance didn't sit at the top of that to start with, and probably, to be fair. So take you right back to that startup loan that you did through Virgin Startup. What was it that they did to help you through that early stage of that process, and you know, the practical steps that they took with you to make sure you were in a good place to get that funding?
Yeah, I think that, as I said before, that practical part was probably as important as the funding itself. You know, it didn't have any money, so we need that funding. But to be able to make sure that that funding was best used correctly, to look at everything from marketing to USPs in the marketplace, to how we are going to brand and market and communicate and manage our cash flow and our P&L, all of that was vital to make sure that that money was actually well used and repaid. So that process for me was great. It meant that we met with the team at Virgin Startup in their offices in Paddington and explained our business, and of course they were incredibly supportive. But then the access and support from a mentor, and I would say that I would advise people that, you know, even if you're only looking for a small amount of funding, I would still go through that process just for the practical learnings about your business, but then also the access to a mentor. Even if it's £4,000 or £5,000, it doesn't have to be the full amount, but that access to a mentor is absolutely invaluable to kind of just get started and make sure, and it allows you to stress test your business, give you access to a new network of people, and a new also community of people who have been in the same situation as you starting up at the same time. And that for me was, as I said before, as valuable as actually the money itself.
It's a really great example of this old adage of, you know, spend time working on your business rather than just working in your business, because it helps you, you know, draw on experience from those that are around you, whether it's somebody that's officially there as a mentor or even your peer group. How was those, was there a kind of a light bulb moment when you were having these discussions early on around what type of information you needed to provide? Go, oh, I didn't realize that. Didn't realize how important that was.
Absolutely. I think it's a key element is really planning cash flow. As you were saying before, Paul, it's, you know, cash is king, the old adage. And for me, it was, okay, we've got a great idea. We've got money in the bank. We're profitable, but where are there going to be pinch points? Where are there going to be challenges? What potential risks are there coming up, which you haven't thought about, that you might need a kind of a cash injection, which might then take money out of the business for later dates. So now we've got just an absolutely incredible CFO who, you know, manages not just monthly, but we've got cash flow projections, you know, 2-3 years in the future, which is just completely managing our. And I'm not great at that. It's not good for me, but that's where, on that startup process, a really vital piece of advice for me is really understanding, doing a self audit and understanding what you're good at, what you're bad at, and then bringing people around your business to then be able to kind of, whether they're paid employees or mentors or giving you support through a third party like Virgin Startup, where they're able to kind of help you fill those gaps of your knowledge. And finance isn't one for me which I'm naturally skilled at. So having those people around you, both from an operational perspective and a finance perspective, is invaluable to make sure the business is viable. But that for me was a great learning, you know, doing that self audit. There's a lot of pressure for founders to have to do or be able to do all things, and it's just too much pressure for an individual. and doing that self audit. So you take your pressure off yourself to make sure that you're doing the things that you're great at and doubling down on those areas, but bringing people around you who are good at the parts you're not, I think is really useful.
Yeah, I think this principle of recognizing where there are some development areas and the bits of your business that you do need to tap in and get some support and help from, I think is really key. If you play to your strengths all the time, it kind of will just push you down one particular road. So you talked a lot about your further funding journey. How has that experience for you as a founder changed as the amount you're asking for maybe has gone up? The type of funding has changed. Are there some principles that are the same, or are there things that have changed?
I think the principles are similar in terms of it's just a lot more risk. You know, if you're asking for 1 million, as we've done in the last couple of years, and we're now about to start raising funding for 10.5 million for property purchases and tech development and international further expansion. You know, you need to make sure that everything you're asking for is well thought out. It's rigorous. You've planned it to the penny. You've developed milestones. You've thought about your ability to repay it and your serviceability of that debt or those loans, and that I think is so. You know, as much of a risk was of 25,000 to us, and how much planning and preparation we needed to do. 1 million and now 10 million is equally, if not more important. So really being as thorough as we have been to make sure that money is repayable is kind of absolutely vital. And the support of the partners of British Business Bank is vital, whether they're organizations like Virgin Startup, Big Issue Invest. I didn't mention we also got money, another source of funding from Big Issue Invest from British Business Bank as well, and subsequently SIB. So all of those partners are not just giving out the money, but they're also supporting and doing due diligence. And that due diligence process is really vital in making sure that the idea and the planning is well thought through.
Yeah, that's absolutely key. And it's kind of a relationship with a finance partner, isn't it, rather than just a finance provider, which I think is absolutely key to developing that and helping businesses like yours grow. Sarah, are you back with us?
I am back. Sorry, I think something happened. I dropped off the platform, but I'm so glad that I'm back, Cemal, to be able to speak to you. And what I can say is, I think your story is incredible, and this social element that you have. And I've been and found one of the coffee carts, as I was saying to you, in Borough Market, and I just think your whole story is inspirational. So it was unfortunate that at the point I wanted to say that to you, I couldn't say it, but I'm back, and it was great to hear some of the questions and answers that you gave, to Paul, and thanks for stepping in, Paul, there. But I'm back in the house, everybody.
Good to have you back, Sarah.
Is there anything else that you want to highlight yourself, Cemal?
Yeah, I think it's part of the advocacy work that I do is that of social enterprise. Since coronavirus, we've seen a huge increase in the numbers of consumers, and especially businesses who are trying to do more from an ESG perspective or a social impact perspective. Not everybody has the disposable income to donate to charities, but if you're going to be buying a product, in our case, coffee or water or AV equipment, or if you're a business or whatever the case may be, there tends to invariably be a social option. And we're seeing this more and more around the world, whether they're D&I focused or they're social enterprise focused. So really thinking about how you can incorporate social impact into our local communities and doing good at the same time is not just the right thing to do from the perspective of the world that we live in, but also from the perspective of a consumer and businesses demanding that now. The government have implemented the Social Value Act, which means that for government procurement, there's a 10% weighting, and it's now about to go up. In most, Manchester Council have got 30% weighting on government procurement. So not only is it the right thing to do, but actually it's becoming important from the perspective of making your business viable to be able to sell more product at the same time. And so it's a win-win. You're doing good for the world we live in, but you're also able to sell more product and make more income, more profit. So I just want to kind of be a voice for social impact, social enterprise, and get organizations to start thinking about how they can weave social enterprise into their business models.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating the fact that you've done all of that, and then there's the sustainability and the net zero angle within your business as well, that you're kind of ticking a number of boxes and sort of out there. And all the work you're doing is is definitely inspirational, and it's a great story. So we're lucky to have you here talking to us today, Cemal, about it all. Is there anything else that we were talking through when Paul was running through some of the slides? I know when we talked before this, you were talking about your CFO in particular. So some of the things like that have been vital, or that you've said, I want to concentrate, and I'm doing, you're the entrepreneurial coming up with the ideas, but other things that you may want to say to other people that are here today that they might want to think about.
I think it's that point around not feeling like you have to, as a founder, have to know everything and do everything, and taking those pressures off your shoulders, understanding what you're good at, doubling down on those areas, and understanding that there's so much support around us from government, from business, from organizations like yourself. And we're so lucky to have that support in the UK. And as I mentioned before, in comparison to what we see in other countries that we're in without wanting to alienate countries like the US and France and etc., who do so much already, but we've just seen, and maybe we know where to look. Maybe that's the answer, and it's better signposted. And but the focus on entrepreneurialism and developing a business, I think, is so ingrained in the kind of the British psyche, that having the support around us to be able to know which direction to go, I think, is absolutely vital. And the work that the government are doing, British Business Bank are doing, I think, is vital to help us grow out of the problems that we are seeing at the moment, in terms of GDP growth and cost of living crisis. The way we fight out of that is through business and entrepreneurialism, in my mind. So if we can do that through a social enterprise tint as well, and kind of lens, is I think absolutely vital to kind of tackle the GDP growth that we need, but then at the same time the social challenges that we're facing as well.
Yeah, no, great answer. It's an amazing story, and thank you for freeing up your time. One little sneaky question at the end before we move on to the closing: is there anything that happened along the journey that you would say, oh, I wish that didn't happen as well, that you just want to call out whilst we've got other people listening as well?
Coronavirus perhaps would be
yeah, no, that's probably the obvious one.
2 to 3 year blip. But I mean, I think it's from our personal perspective, the perception around homelessness, I think, is really important. We're not just looking at people who are lazy, who don't want to work. There's so much opportunity for individuals, and I think wasted talent in people who might be out on the streets, who might be on, some cases might be on universal credit. And I think it's just changing the perception of those individuals to see the opportunity in them where they can work and want to work, and creating opportunities in normal day business. I mean, we supply coffee, as I mentioned before, into companies like JP Morgan, we're the main coffee supplier for Google in Europe. So it's all these organizations want to provide opportunities for people. It's just changing the perception of the people that we are supporting, whether they have disabilities, mental health issues, they've got autism, whatever the issue is, they're homeless. Changing that perception is vital to then them being seen as a workforce development opportunity in the communities that we live in. So I think that change of perception, I think, is really important. And for us as well, having our current CFO, cash flow issues are always a problem within organizations. And having the right people around you to be able to manage your cash flow and your future P&L, I think, is absolutely vital. And that was a big learning curve for me. I spent a lot of time trying to be that CFO, and I was failing. And some of the other businesses I set up did fail, but fortunately having the right people around in these businesses that we have has been invaluable for us.
Thank you. It's been a great interview, and thanks for Paul to stepping in earlier, but to both of you, it's great to hear this story, and as somebody who's been and tried out the products there, I'm encouraging more people to do the same, because what you've achieved is inspirational. And thank you very much, because I know you're very busy, to have freed up your time to join us today. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So we're now coming towards the end of today's. So I don't know, have we got any questions? Lorna's been managing the questions in the background. Is there any that we have got in the chat, Lorna, that you want to ask me?
Right. Yes. There's somebody asking where they can find some more information about equity.
You can. Well, what I was going to mention is today we've kind of done a more shorter version of what we're starting to do at the British Business Bank and part of UK Network. We're trying to build on the education and awareness piece. So we have a session. We've done 2 so far. And there will be a third one that's going to launch sometimes in the next few weeks. So I'd encourage everybody to watch out for that and, join that session, because we'll be able to give you a bit more detail around some of the equity options and things that you can consider. And also, looking at things like the UK Business Angels Association site and having a look around there to see what information is out there that might be a support, because I think many people, as Paul touched on, you think about angel investing, sometimes people are just straight to the Dragon's Den situation, and is it like that? And there is an assumption, and obviously the backdrop is very difficult at the moment, that there is the friends and family cash that's out there to help startups as well. And we know, obviously, we appreciate that isn't the case for everybody, and there are some entrepreneurs out there have these fantastic ideas and they just need the cash and support. And that is where us as the British Business Bank and others, try to help support some of these things and look for some of the options. So I'd very much encourage anybody who's listening in, if they want to listen to the more detailed investor readiness piece that we're doing, to join the next session. And throughout the year, we'll be considering and taking feedback of what else is out there that you would like from the team, and trying to build some more webinars and sessions to support you on that journey so that you can understand it. But yeah, it's a great question.
Okay, the next question is about the guide that we mentioned earlier. That's the Making Business Finance Work for You guide. Now, unfortunately, some people are having trouble getting it from the resources tab. So what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to try and push that out to you all. So aside from that, you could refresh your page and that should pop up again now for those of you that are having problems. And the next question is, somebody is looking for a business mentor.
Business mentor, that there are many people out there across, I would encourage you to look for somebody maybe on your local patch that can actually meet with you in person and understand. But there are a lot of mentor groups out there, and if in any way anybody wants to reach out separately to me, we'll try and help find somebody out there that might be able to support you. But there are many mentors throughout the UK, many entrepreneurs who are similar to Cemal, that very much believe in what they're doing and want to be able to help other founders out there. So there will definitely be mentors around that you can tap into, and it's something I would very much always want to encourage is get those people around you, get the people around you who can be devil's advocate, who you can bounce off, who may have been on a journey like this themselves and know what happens. So, that's another great question really is, I would encourage everybody to try and find somebody out there that could be a mentor, and definitely somebody who's in your local area who understands that part of the country and some of the issues, because, they're very, very different. That would be key, is getting somebody who understands your local patch as well.
Okay, the next question is, what are the requirements for a recovery loan as a small business?
The recovery loan scheme is run via our Guarantee Wholesale Solutions team. And basically, we have a number of delivery partners that are involved in this. So you would have to approach one of the delivery partners and go through their approval process for a loan. And it may be then that they know that it is a loan that they want to consider as part of the recovery loan scheme criteria. But yeah, obviously that's there, but we do offer that. The British Business Bank doesn't lend directly. We have business partners out there. So it could be that one of the delivery partners is able to help you.
Okay, are there any more questions at all from anyone?
Well, we're doing well considering the slight technical issues that we've stayed on time at the moment. So thank you for bearing with me till I was back in the house, everybody. Really, I just want to thank everybody for joining today, and to Minister Hollingray for being part of this, and to Cemal for giving up his valuable time so that we could talk to him about his real life journey to finance. We will remain committed, the British Business Bank, to continue our work in this space to try and support you, because it's the top thing that comes up from any intel that we gather out there is that education and awareness of the finance options that are available to you is something, you know, that you want more support on. And as British Business Bank is independent and impartial, we're very much focused on what do we do within this space to continue to help small businesses on this journey at the moment, because all of us here know, you know, is an extremely difficult backdrop at the moment. And, you know, you've been facing many issues, you know, the pandemic that Cemal mentioned, obviously there was Brexit, and, you know, the high cost of living and interest rate rises at the moment. We're very aware that, you know, it is a difficult backdrop. So we want to do as much as we can to support you going forwards on that journey. As I mentioned earlier, Business Finance Week, we're on Wednesday, so we've got the rest of today, tomorrow and Thursday. So if you found today useful, I'd very much like to encourage you to check out any of the other events, you know, that are there that you might want to register to join. Maybe you can get to one that's in your local area that is a, you know, an in-person event, or join one of the other virtual sessions. We will also send a survey out, a short survey after this, to everybody who's attended, to get some feedback from you about, you know, today's session and was it useful, etc. So if you could fill the survey in that comes out separately, it would be very much appreciated. But other than that, I know you probably all need to get on with your day. So I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who joined today. And I hope you found today's session useful. So thank you very much.